Well, this is a
kinda?
very crazy story. So are you
We love
ready?
we
Are you
love crazy
are
stories.
you
All right, hold
sitting
on.
down?
Let me. Okay, we're
Yes.
good now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So basically, when I was 29, I said a prayer that by the time I was 30, I would know my calling because I knew I was put on this earth for something. I just didn't know what. At that
Right.
time, I actually was a recruiter. I helped find people jobs, and that was fulfilling to me. But when I was 5, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, I was at my grandmother's house playing outside in the gravel driveway,
Right.
and I was right by the road. But in the 70s, you could be right on the street and nobody paid attention and nobody cared and no one's going to steal you, right?
Yeah.
So I remember being in the driveway and picking up rocks in the driveway. I loved rocks. And so this man rides up on this bicycle. I can see him to this day. He had on a red plaid shirt and jeans, and he had boots on. He had sandy brown hair, and he was wearing like horn rimmed glasses. It was the 70s, right? So he gets off his bike and lays it down, and he comes over and he kind of squats down next to me, and he's looking at me, and I can see his face to this day. He had these crystal clear blue eyes. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just playing with these pretty rocks," or whatever I said when I was 5. And he said, "I want you to look at me." And I looked up at him, and he said, "When you get big, you're going to be something very special, okay?" And I looked at him and I said, "Okay." And he said, "Look at me." He said, "Don't forget." I said, "Okay." And so I turned my head to pick up a rock. I was going to hand him one of my favorite rocks in my pile, and he was gone. So we've always heard stories of angels. You've probably heard angels visiting you, but
Right.
literally him and his bicycle were
Completely gone.
completely gone. Okay. So I'm in my cubicle finding people jobs when I was 29.
Fast forward.
And here comes those blue eyes in that face in my mind's eye, right? And I hear the words and I see his face and he says, "Don't forget." 2 words. And I said, "Oh,
That took your breath away.
I don't think I'm doing my something special."
Yeah.
He said I was going to be something special. I like this, but I don't think this is it.
Right.
And so I took a giant leap of faith. My dad was a born again preacher in the 70s. So I had my connection with God. I call it my God voice. So I went home that night and I said a prayer that by the time I was 30, I would know my calling in this life. So I quit my job. I had a pretty good paying job and I waited tables at night so I could do anything that I wanted during the day to try to find out what my calling was. So I really dug in deep and did some crazy things. I worked at a florist. I worked for an interior designer. I had a bachelor's of fine art degree at that.
Man,
point.
You were just like going through this.
But I knew it wasn't.
Yeah, it didn't feel
right.
Right.
And so one of the jobs that I volunteered for, I thought maybe I want to go into marine science. And I was in Sarasota, Florida at the time. They had an animal hospital there called Moat Marine Aquarium.
Yeah.
So it was an aquarium kind of. They did tours. We had sea turtle patrol and we had manatees, 2 manatees, Hugh and Buffett that I helped care for. And
that must have been pretty cool.
I gave tours and it was really fun.
Yeah.
And then I was asked to be part of the mammal hospital and the mammal rescue team because they knew I wanted to go into marine science.
Yeah.
And so we started rehabbing. Well, they were already doing it. I started rehabbing whales and dolphins that stranded on the beach. And I really loved it. And I would sit there. We would measure their breath rate and their heart rate. And
it sounds fulfilling.
It was very fulfilling. And I really loved it. And I was doing a vet exam. I was the person that took the blood to the hospital after the vets would take the blood from the tail or the fluke of the dolphin. And I was on site. It was about 6:30 in the morning, and we got a call that a mama whale had come in and brought her baby pygmy sperm whale, and it was beached right on our beach. And so I was just serendipitous. I got to go on the rescue to rescue this whale. His name was Abby. We didn't know if it was a male or female, so it turned out to be a male, but we called him Abby.
Yeah.
And he had a bacterial infection in his stomach. Mm. And so we rescued him that day and brought him into our mammal hospital. He was so sick he couldn't swim on his own. He had to be held 24/7 and fed by a tube.
Jeez Louise.
And so every time it was my turn to be on
Yeah, like
duty to hold him,
whale watch.
there were maybe 3 or 4 of us at a time, 24 hours a day, that had to be on shift to hold
Holy
this whale
moly.
up. So when it was my time, very strange things started happening and people started noticing. He would be very agitated. He was sick, right? They figured he was 6-8 months old. So he was probably 125 pounds at that point.
Lord.
And so when it was my turn to hold him, after a few minutes, his agitation would just calm down. So it was like the running joke around the hospital. I was the whale whisperer, right? So I thought, well, my dad's a preacher. I'm just doing Jesus's work.
Yeah.
I'm using my hands to help heal this animal. I didn't know, but the breath rate and the heart rate weren't matching the rhythm that I was feeling when I held this whale. I could feel this strange sensation running through my hands, and the whale would just start to, when I felt the rhythm, the whale would start to calm down.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know anything about alternative medicine at that point, so I had no idea what was going on.
But you knew there was something happening.
But I got so into this whale that I probably volunteered at this animal hospital 35 hours a week.
Wow.
If I wasn't waiting tables, I was
Wow.
single at the time, no kids. I was with this whale. So we made this incredible bond.
Yeah.
And what I realized holding this whale was it wasn't the breath rate and the heart rate that I was interested in. It was the healing of the animal and being able to calm this animal's stress. And so I went on my way. Abby unfortunately died.
Oh, man.
I was so distraught by the news of his death that I couldn't really go back to the animal hospital. I was grieving the loss of this animal because we had become like he knew me when I got in the tank.
Yeah.
And he would try to bite when he could swim at the end. He would try to bite everybody that would come for him, but he never did that with me. So I became like friends with the whale.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but
No, I think there's great
So-
energy there.
so about 6 months into my stint of finding my calling, I got a call from my recruiting team, and they're just like, "We miss you. Will you come have lunch with us?" And so we're in the middle of lunch, and they goaded me into coming back to work. So at that point,
Reeled you back in,
I
right?
was pretty sick of waiting tables. I was waiting tables at 2 places. One was a country club with 5 different restaurants. So I was working in 6 different restaurants, and I was exhausted, and I missed having the money.
I was
So
about to say, you must have been working like 60 hours a week or
I was.
more, man.
Mhm.
Doing it at night and volunteering during the day.
Well, this was after it kind of curbed, after Abby died, and it curbed down. I
Yeah.
thought, I'm just going to go back for a while. And so a few months goes by, and I kind of forgot about what I was doing. And so about 2 weeks before I turned 30, I read the self-help books. I did all these jobs, all the crappy jobs too. I'm in a parking garage in the top of a building in Sarasota. I put my hands up on my hips. I looked up at the sky. It was a clear blue sky with these pretty clouds floating by. And I said, "All right, God, I did the crappy jobs. I read all these self-help books. I did every job I thought I could love. By the way, my birthday's in 2 weeks in case you forgot." And I just went on my way because I knew we still had 2 weeks. That was still a lot of time. So another week goes by, and I had a dream that I was standing with a white lab coat on next to a small table, which even at almost 30, I'd never had a massage. I didn't grow up with means or anything to
Yeah.
go get massages.
Right.
So it was a small table, and there was a woman lying on the table, and we were holding hands, and we were smiling at each other. And I sit up out of bed. This was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm staring at my hands like this. I could feel this very strange current kind of going through my body, and it was almost like it was coming out of my hands. My hands looked red to me at the time. So I get up out of my bed, and I go into the living room, because in the 70s, we still use a phone book, or the 90s. This is in the 90s, sorry. In the 90s, we still use a phone book. So I grabbed the phone book out of the living room, and I went back to my bedroom,
Yeah.
and I opened up the phone book. This was about a week before I turned 30, to acupuncture schools.
You got to be kidding me.
And I woke up from my dream.